Welcome to the Irish Farmers Journal Weekly Podcast, brought to you by Ornua, the home of Irish dairy.
Hello, this is Thomas Hubert, Digital Editor with the Irish Farmers Journal. This year's FBD Young Farmer of the Year is Kevin Moran, a dairy farmer from County Mayo, now based in Galway. The Irish Farmers Journal's news correspondent Pat O'Toole caught up with him before the long night was out at the awards ceremony in Drogheda on Tuesday.
Growing up on a home farm, like, it was a relatively small scale dairy farm, but scale didn't matter when, I suppose, you were learning to love the job, you know. And it was just the aura of getting out, you know, that air in the morning, going for the cows, like, you know. I just loved that part of it. It didn't matter whether there was 20 cows or 200 cows out in the field. So really that's where it started. And what I would say is going through secondary school, you know, I had friends who filled out CEO and Thomas do all sorts of different courses. None of them had the same level of clarity as what I had.
You're the youngest of a big family, is that right?
Yes, I'm the youngest of 11, 5 brothers, 5 sisters, and 23 nieces and nephews.
Super. But often the youngest of a big family is cosseted, indulged, and maybe a little protected. You don't fit that bill, really. You're someone who was fairly driven. You were on your 10th, I think, loan application before you got an approval on it.
Yeah. I never thought it wasn't going to happen. There is a way. There's always a way. And it didn't really feel that long. Being refused 9 times sounds daunting. But what it was probably 4 different proposals to 2 different banks each time. So I was going to the 2 different banks with the same proposal, and both would refuse, okay? And I suppose in hindsight, I could fully see the reason behind it, you know. I had no level of experience, I had no collateral. I had literally just these big ambitious plans. But eventually, 10th time round, the difference was I got references from people within Arivo. I had my Teagasc advisor with me going for the interview, and ultimately an agri advisor within AIB for some reason came out walking the farm with me, and he threw his weight behind me. I think that's what made the difference in the 10th time. There was no appetite for risk there from the bank at all. That has improved. I feel anyhow in dealing with them, that has improved. Maybe they trust me more now, but certainly in 2013 there was no appetite for risk from the banks.
You said yourself a very steep learning curve the first year, lots of mistakes made, and you were very candid about that. But I mean, you can't go in that hard, that fast, and not make mistakes. It's not possible.
The whole, you know, maybe first 12, 18 months, I realised that you really only truly learn what you discover for yourself. Being able to make your own mistakes is fantastic. And I know that sounds funny, but it is, and it served me well, because I suppose I'd say I'm certainly my own biggest critic, and so when I make a mistake, I'm the first one to hold my hands up and say, I've done that wrong. How can I do it better? How can I, you know, improve that? Whereas if I was headstrong and thought that, you know, I didn't want to acknowledge my, you know, my mistakes, I think, you know, obviously you can't fix them. So being able to hold your hands up and say, I made a mistake is, you know, it's nothing wrong with it.
Is there a freedom in not being on the home farm where you're striking out, still within the family unit, but striking out in a different way, and maybe a little apart from, where you have a bit of space to broaden your shoulders and be your own man quicker?
Yeah, I think certainly a greater sense of achievement. But in saying that, I'd be absolutely nowhere without the family.
From a standing start to get to 220 cows as quickly as you have, the sky is the limit in that sense. But against that, what do you see as sustainable for one person to be able to do?
I think we need to realise we're not New Zealand, we don't have the land mass, and once you exceed 300 cows, land typically, this is not in every case, typically tends to become long, narrow strips, and you're putting a lot of walking on the cows, and it's not like you just get these big square blocks, you know, and put a rotary in the middle and everything's hunky dory. So I think there is a certain element of that. I think you ask what's enough, and you refer to kind of, I suppose, the sort of rapid expansion that happened. A line that Phil O'Keefe, chairman of Dunbia, gave me, and it'll always stick with me, is more businesses die of indigestion than starvation. I think that's something I need to be very conscious of because, opportunities might arise and all the rest of it. And it genuinely is against my nature to turn them down, and I'll do everything in my power not to. But if it doesn't serve my cash flow and serve the business well, if it means that I'm going to be putting in extra hours for no greater return, putting more stress in the system, then I really will relook at it. I'll relook at it, see is there a different way of doing it. But what's enough? I think it's very case specific. But for me in Carlisle, I think 300 cows is always my goal. And look at, I had a 10-year target. I'm only in year 4, so I have 6 years to get 80 cows trying to achieve that.
You're listening to the Irish Farmers Journal podcast, brought to you by Ornua, the home of Irish dairy.
More than 300 delegates from all over Europe met in Cork on Monday and Tuesday to update the first declaration on rural development drawn up here 20 years ago. There were farmers, local and national government officials, academics and rural community representatives, and they agreed on a declaration setting 10 priorities for the EU's next rural development policy after 2020. We have the text of the declaration and more details on farmersjournal.ie. Some of it is nothing new. There should be administrative simplification and more input from farmers and rural people themselves, but new issues such as climate change and access to broadband have also emerged. To answer the real needs of rural communities, there were also questions on the current separation of European CAP funding in 2 pillars between the single farm payment on the one hand and rural development schemes such as TAMS, the Beef Data and Genomics Programme or LEADER, for example, on the other hand. Former European Agriculture Commissioner Franz Fischler, who received the first Cork Declaration and started rural development programmes 20 years ago, was of this opinion.
A new concept will be necessary and should form the basis for the future rural development policy. And therefore it is so important to break down the existing silos, to break down this only sectoral thinking which we have very often here also in our regulations. We should intensify the system thinking. We should intensify interdisciplinarity. We should intensify transdisciplinarity, which means the cooperation, new forms of cooperation between science, economy, and policy making. We should also overcome the traditional pillar structure. And I think the question is not whether we should have a third pillar, the question is we should have a different system, different packages, how we organize the measures which should be applied in the future policy.
The current Commissioner, Phil Hogan, was also open to a big shake-up in the way rural development policy is managed.
There's always a difference of opinion in terms of how many pillars you need. What I'm interested is in the programmes that are necessary to be implemented to achieve our policy objectives. And I don't get hung up on whether there's pillar 1, pillar 2 or pillar 3 or 4. What is important is in terms of having the resources to implement a good programme that there will be a good take-up on in terms of meeting policy objectives across the board, including the one you mentioned.
Mr. Commissioner, in your speech you mentioned that all the possibilities could cost. Will the funds for rural development will increase in future CAP or?
Well, as you know, budgets are a matter for European Council, and the MFF discussions are about to start towards the end of this year. And it's not for me to say what the outcome is going to be. Obviously, the Brexit decision is going to have an input into these discussions as well, where there have been 7 billion euros of net contributions from the UK to the European Union budget. So is there going to be new instruments of funding for these programmes? These are all questions that are going to be above my pay grade. I would love to have more money for all of these programmes, but I'm a realist to know that there's a balance to be struck between prudent financial expenditure and the necessary programmes.
As you heard just there, getting resources to achieve all the objectives set out in the Cork Declaration will be the next challenge. This was the message from the IFA's Rural Development Chairman, Joe Brady.
It was a very worthwhile conference, and there was a lot of different areas covered, and the declaration sounds good. I suppose at the end of the day it would take funding to put all the things that was mentioned here today in place going forward.
Funding was mentioned, and we know with the UK going, there's already less money available. There is increased scrutiny from people, taxpayers wanting to know where the money is going. How can we obtain this money and justify that it's working for farmers and for rural communities?
Well, I think right across Europe, leaving out the UK, right across Europe, I think there has to be more of an awareness with the general public throughout the cities, the importance of the rural areas, let it be in Ireland or Eastern Europe. People need to see how vitally important it is that this money is going for a good purpose in rural areas for the benefit of not just for farmers but for the people of Europe as a whole.
We hope that you're enjoying this Irish Farmers Journal podcast, brought to you by Ornua, the home of Irish dairy. Find out more at farmersjournal.ie.
A major meeting of international livestock experts took place at the European Federation of Animal Science conference in Belfast last week. There, our Northern Ireland correspondent Peter McCann met George Williamson of Dunbia to talk about the variations in cattle that come into factories.
So as a processor, we have a big issue with variation in carcasses. The modern day consumer wants a consistent product 365 days of the year. It's in the white meat sectors, have it consistently. You walk in, you buy chicken, it tastes the same today, it tastes the same tomorrow, it tastes the same next week. In beef, there's huge variation. We have our retail specs set. Weight ranges vary from 240, 280 kilos up to 400 kilos. Again, fat cover varies from 2 up to 4. This all increases carcass variation and ultimately meat quality. When we're looking at things like pH, temperature decline and other factors that will vary meat quality, these variations can have a significant impact on the final product we produce. Another big one is the weight I talked about. Whenever we are skin packing trays, the weight range of carcasses can significantly impact the size of the loins. Again, a lot of these loins are sold in, these steaks are sold in catch weight. So if we have too heavy a loin, it produces a very thin steak, which ultimately will not adhere to the cooking instructions in the back of the packet. And in this modern world where a lot of people who've lost a generation who know how to cook, there's significant problems with thin steaks. They cook them to the instructions in the back and they end up with this wee flappy thing that's as tough as leather. So we have a big problem with that there. And similarly works the other way. We have a very, very narrow, very light based with a very big thick loin. Again, they might want a well done steak or a medium to well, and they're cooking it for the time limit set in the packet. But again, they're producing a very raw steak. So they really don't know how to cook it, they're not confident, and again the variation we're bringing into the chain doesn't help this.
We're getting the message to farmers. What is the plan there now? Is it communicating to them? I know there's a lot of talk about changing the grading and things like that. I suppose any change like that, farmers have to know about it well in advance.
Yeah, so at the minute the Europe grid's a hot topic of debate. No matter where you go, it's the tip of everyone's tongues. But the fact of the matter is there's no better system there in place at the minute. The Europe system grades cattle according to conformation and it pays for the higher yields. So again, that's the direction the breeders are went in at, try and produce what we have asked for. They've brought in these big continental breeds, which is hard to get the fat cover on until you're up at them heavier weights. By reducing the carcass weight, trying to pull it down again and looking towards your native breeds, we're trying to produce that more consistent product. So you see things like incentives being offered for Aberdeen Angus and native breeds with that extra bit of eating quality. And again, we need to look at that's about communication with the farmers, and we run several tours around the retail packing facilities and abattoir, bringing farmers in and showing them what we do and showing them issues within our chain, because a lot of time the farmers will question, what do you actually deserve to get paid for? You know, what does Dunbia want to get paid for? So they need to come in and see what's going on. We do several walk chains with them, take them from the point of the lairage where they normally just abandon the animal if they brought in themselves, and take them right through to retail pack up on the retail site, so you can see where their product has ended up and why we need it to be what we need it to be in the end. But improved communication right from retailer to producer, so that involves the retailer, the consumer, the processor and the producer. It's a whole big supply chain and everyone has to pull together in it. There's no point in us setting standards. Retailers can't demand stuff with us. It all has to be combined together. We all have to work in one big continuous chain to produce what the consumer wants, because ultimately if the retailer can't sell beef, if producers are producing stuff the retailers can't sell, they're not going to buy any more. So again, that drives abattoirs into a difficult position where they haven't the power to buy the cattle they need to fill orders, because the orders have just been reduced.
The Irish Farmers Journal weekly podcast, brought to you by Ornua, the home of Irish dairy.
Also in Belfast, Professor Eileen Wall from Scotland's Rural College spoke with Peter McCann about ways of using genetics to improve feed efficiency and methane emissions in livestock.
What we focused on in today's session was looking at directly being able to record methane but also feed efficiency, because you know, a lot of the greenhouse gas and the carbon footprint of our agricultural systems are based around the efficiency with which how animals use the resources we give to them and what we do with the outputs of it, including the waste products. So we focus today specifically on methane and feed efficiency, because these are what the public, I suppose, would associate as particularly the methane as an undesired consequence. But actually farmers already, by breeding for efficiency in production and also efficiency in terms of fertility and lower disease, are making a big difference to the carbon footprint. Probably looking at reducing it by about 1 to 1.5% per annum in many ruminant populations where they're actively breeding for traits that improve efficiency. Why we're looking at methane in this conference is it's that extra bit. We need to go that extra mile. So we need to think, once we've exhausted all the benefits that we have from the efficiencies of breeding for productive cows that don't get sick, or cows that survive in a herd long enough, that we do need to think of these future traits, because breeding, particularly breeding, is based on something we decide today won't actually have an impact on the herd until the cow becomes a milking cow. So we're talking about 3 or 4 years, and then she herself is replaced in the herd. So it's a longer term decision, so we can't just think about the traits today but also the traits of the future. But we're already doing a good job, so farmers should be proud of that, and we're just going to help them do a little bit more by doing this type of research.
So as far as the research so far and some of the papers we heard today, looking at the methane production, is there any trends been seen in different types of breeds, or I suppose even within breeds, different types of cows, whatever?
Yeah, there's definitely, the fact that we saw heritability means that there is variation in the population. So there are some cows that produce more, or some sheep that produce more, and then other studies, some of which were shown today, show that at a given level of product output or feed intake, animals will be more or less efficient in their methane. These tend to be based on experimental type of research projects rather than population-wide studies, but it does suggest it's there. We wouldn't necessarily say replace all the EBVs that farmers are being so excellently with up to now with, let's just only breed for methane. We will put this into an overall efficiency index, or, what would make it really easy if farmers were paid for doing something about methane, because then we can put pounds and pence in it, and they could treat it along with all the other things that they get that cost them or make them money. Yeah.
Just finally, Professor Wall, these experiments, there is some big populations been done. I presume it's all on research farms. Is it a difficult thing to actually get onto a commercial farm and a wider population and on commercial circumstances?
Yeah, so there's some of the data that was presented today was actually on commercial farms, but with the support of research, so it's researchers going onto farms and helping them record it. A lot of the tools that we're talking about some of the tools we're talking about wouldn't be portable onto commercial farms and would mess up your production system because they're very invasive. They take the animal out of its natural environment, etc. But some of the methods, some of the sort of sniffer technology, some of even the camera technologies in terms of how they read infrared, etc., can help us get a proxy for it on farms. So you can think of a laser gun that measures the concentration around in front of its light beam. Some of the sniffers, which are very similar to sniffers that are in breathalyzers, we're just measuring the gas. Yeah. And these you could imagine sitting maybe inside in a parlour inside the feed trough and get a point estimate for individual cows. Similarly, in beef, you could imagine a light shining across the feed face and being able to separate it out, maybe getting a group measurement. The talks today, I suppose, highlighted the difficulties in recording it. I think the technologies will catch up, and these sort of more difficult data will be added to by better and better data, both from research herds and commercial herds.
You're listening to the Irish Farmers Journal podcast, brought to you by Ornua, the home of Irish dairy.
The Ploughing is only 2 weeks away, and we hope you're as excited as we are about it. To find out what the organisers are planning this year, Anthony Jordan went to meet the Assistant Managing Director of the National Ploughing Association, Anna May McHugh.
The team involved in it on the ground, it just builds during the year. In our office, right through the winter time, we'd only have 4 people. And then we have our board of directors, and we meet about 4 or 5 times a year. And the executive meet every about 6 weeks. We have an executive of 7. So, in the off season, it's just a very, very small team. And then it builds gradually. Our site team start work here. They'll come for a day here and there kind of throughout the springtime, and then they'll be here full time from the beginning of August. And we have a fantastic team, a lot of volunteers involved, and the local county hosting the event will become very involved. The county secretary here, Trina Connolly, she's here every day for the last 3 weeks. and a lot of the ploughing organisation from Offaly will assist in the marking out of the stands and everything. But we have a core team that kind of they do the same job every year. And by the time we actually get to the day of the event, we'll have between volunteers and the different organisations, we've a lot of GA clubs that will steward for us, and the different staffing groups, we'll have at least 600 or 700 people in different jobs on the day.
And personally, what does it mean to you, the National Ploughing Championships?
Hardship, the bags under my eyes, long nights, early mornings. Look, it's a new challenge every year, and I suppose it's a huge sense of achievement. And I would have to say that, you know, on the days of the event, when the thing is running smooth, you really, really do feel that you're doing something for rural Ireland, you know, massively so. And people will stop you on the trackway and say, look, great event, well done, thank you, because nobody owns the ploughing, it's owned by the people. And it's a bit like the politics, it's, you know, for the people, by the people, and that's what the ploughing is about. And everybody feels an ownership of the whole event, and when it comes together and it happens well and everyone goes home happy, that's what it's all about. And when it's good for business and good for the exhibitors that are here, good competition in the ploughing ground, and that everybody has a successful event and go away happy, that's really what it's about.
And when you see the speech that your mother made there, how proud are you and everything that she's achieved?
But did you hear her saying that there's no sign of her retiring, so I'm gone, you know what I mean? I've had to move out already because I'm General Secretary of the World Organisation, because there was no chance of getting the big job here. So I go in the morning to the World Contest in England, and I'm gone for 12 days. But look, it's tremendous. She's a massive mentor. Like, who could ask for anyone like her? The one thing people say to me, you must, you know, always saying about how proud you are. And I said, I am, yes, during the day, but in the evening, if you ever sit down for 5 minutes, she just says, is there something wrong? And when a woman of her age says that to you, she just goes, she doesn't go to bed before 12 at night. She's never up after 7, and that's just the way she is. She was almost killed in a car accident earlier in the year, and she's as better than ever now. So look, she's a tremendous person and a fantastic mentor. That's really as much as you can say.
Thank you very, very much for your time.
We hope that you're enjoying this Irish Farmers Journal podcast, brought to you by Ornua, the home of Irish dairy. Find out more at farmersjournal.ie.
Also at this year's Ploughing, one winner of Irish Country Living's Cookery competition will stand next to Nevin Maguire for his demonstration on the Irish Farmers Journal stand and walk away with a fantastic prize. Mairead Lavery and Ciara Leahy have the details.
As usual, we have a fantastic stand for our visitors this year. We've got our livestock demos, 50,000 high-vis vests to give away, and of course our resident chef Nevin Maguire will be back once again cooking up some delicious dishes. In this week's Irish Country Living, we have a competition where readers have the chance to cook with Nevin, and Mairead, you're going to tell me more about this.
Yes, this is a wonderful competition which will take place at the Ploughing. We have 3 overnight with dinner, bed and breakfast to give away to readers, compliments of Nevin and Imelda Maguire. Now, what you have to do, we're all very conscious today, you know, product prices are not where they were. Putting good solid food on the table at a reasonable price is really, really essential. So if you think you're good at producing tasty, nutritious meals for your families, if you have a favourite recipe that works every time, and if you think you can produce a main course with vegetables and a dessert for 6 people for under €20, you're exactly who we want to hear from. The under €20 bit is very important. Now look, we don't want people kind of pricing the parsley or the salt or the pepper, or a drop of oil or anything like that. But it's the main ingredients that we're talking about here.
Absolutely.
So,
I mean, I did get a query in this week actually from somebody saying, you know, I'm using 3 eggs instead of 6. Can I half the cost of the, you know, a box of eggs? Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
well,
it's coming in under €20.
Yeah, it's coming in under €20. So what we're looking for is really, you know, the best cooks out there who are producing these good, tasty meals. And what we want people to do is get their recipes into us, and we need the entries in by the 15th of September. Now, the ones that we pick out as being the most tasty, nutritious, and, you know, good value for money recipes, we're asking those people to be available to come to the Ploughing, to get their prize, one on each of the days, and to cook with Nevin when he's given his demonstration to our packed stand. And every Nevin demonstration is just packed out the doors.
Absolutely, jammers. Now, Mairead, you will be doing a bit of this judging. What do you think is going to tickle your fancy when you look at some of the entries?
We're asking people to send in a photograph of one of the 2. Like, if they want to send in the 2, that's grand. The photograph will be interesting, but you'd be looking for something different.
Absolutely.
So maybe the cuts that are not as common and that you really make a great dish out of. So
Absolutely.
look, we've got enough spaghetti bolognese. We all know how to do it. So we don't need that. Maybe a good take on an Irish stew, a good use of stuff you've grown at home.
Marie, just one other thing. Of course, Nevin's going to be with us for the 3 days of the ploughing. Give us a little peek into what he's going to be cooking up.
We have a full kitchen set up for him. I mean, this is a back kitchen, not a mind the stage kitchen, you know, with fridges and sinks and everything that he could possibly need. And he needs it because not alone does he come and do 3 demonstrations a day, but you can actually come to the one at 11 o'clock, the one at 1 o'clock and the one at 3 o'clock and have 3 totally different experiences.
Yeah.
We're trying to kind of just change it around again as usual. And one of the recipes, which sounds lovely, is crispy prawns in phyllo with red pepper salsa. That's a starter. Now, again, you could put probably anything into that phyllo. So it'll give you an idea of how to work that particular
And that's
recipe.
really kind of something that you see in restaurants and think, God, that's gorgeous, but how do I do it?
How do I do it? And and the thing is, I mean, it could be crispy chicken, you know, inside if you don't like prawns. You could, you know, vary it to suit yourself. We've a Vietnamese chicken salad with mango and sesame vinaigrette, and that sounds absolutely gorgeous. In terms of mains, we have a lamb tagine. Lots of people really want to know how to make that. And again, you know, it's a reasonably priced dish and suits everybody in the family.
And I think with lamb tagine, you think that you have to have those fancy dishes.
No, not at all.
I mean, everyone's going to
That's
prove
only
you
for
don't.
show.
Exactly.
Beef stroganoff, again, you know, we all kind of make it the odd time, but what's the classic recipe here? What's the really good one? What's the best cut of meat to suit this recipe? And exactly how long should you need it cooking for? And then when it comes to desserts, I mean, just lemon and passion fruit cream with red berries, an easy chocolate mousse with poached pears. You know, poached pears, one of the very first recipes I ever made for my boyfriend, who's now my husband. I did it, and I still love poached pears to this day. And, you know, so lovely recipes, 3 different sets of demonstrations each of the days, except Thursday now when we just 2 demonstrations on. So look get your seats, we've got places to sit down, and the recipes will all be in the following week's Farmer's Journal. We really want to reward loyal Farmer's Journal readers who keep buying the paper, and the recipes will be in the paper that following week.
Absolutely brilliant, Marie. Now, myself and Marie will be out the stand at the National Ploughing Championships, but if you can't find us, you'll probably find us in the back kitchen sampling the stuff, just to make sure that it's perfect when it goes on stage.
And don't forget to get your entries in. We really want to hear from you. Main course and dessert for under €20 for 6 people. And get your entries into us at Nevin's Cookery Challenge, Irish Country Living, Irish Farm Centre, Bluebell Dublin 12, or to www.farmersjournal.ie/competitions, and you have until the 15th of September to do this.
Thanks, Marie, and you'll find all those details in this week's Irish Country Living.
The Irish Farmers Journal podcast, online at farmersjournal.ie, on the Irish Farmers Journal app and on iTunes every Thursday. Brought to you by Ornua, the home of Irish dairy.